Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be presenting the books that I read during the month of May. So let's get into it. So the first book that I read in the month of May after finishing Dune, which I covered in the last monthly wrap-up, was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. And I can't believe it's pretty much a month already since I finished this book, because I still feel so anxious about it the same way that I felt when I first finished reading it. And this book was absolutely fantastic. It's the first book that I read by Robin Hobb, and it's a piece of fantasy, the first one in a very long series, following Fitz, who is a young boy growing up in a middle-aged kind of fantasy land. And this is a really enjoyable book, and I still really want to go on with the series. I hope I get a chance to lay my hands on the second book in the series and really marathon it fast. Fitz is a young boy who is a bastard in the family. He turns out to be son of a prince who was entailed to be king, but as soon as Fitz appears in the story, this becomes a very big scandal for the prince, for his father, and so he has to back down, and Fitz grows up all alone in a kingdom kind of despised by lots of people until he gets the chance to get some education and become an assassin. This is the book that starts it all up. So I absolutely loved it. I will probably be doing a more detailed review of the whole series as soon as I finish them. But so far I would just love to say that the story is absolutely gripping. There is magic, there are conquests, there is danger, and there's a big moral, complicated story in here, because we are following an assassin to be, and this is something that is also tackled in the book, and I absolutely love that aspect of it. After reading a story that was set in the Middle Ages, I kind of jumped back into 2015 by reading Carry On by Rowell, and this is a book that I have been postponing for a while, even though it was on my most anticipated releases of autumn 2015 video. I really like this book, and the first 70 pages I had a hard time because I was kind of comparing it all the time to Harry Potter. If you don't know, the setting of the book is in a 7th year of a magical school, and it's talking about the chosen Simon, who is kind of waiting for his nemesis to show up, because his nemesis is a vampire and it's his also roommate called Baz, and Simon is really anticipating the last year at this version of the magical academy, magical school. So the first 70 pages I had a really hard time, because first of all I had all these references to Harry Potter, and then also because there is a bit of profane language in this one, not something really harsh, but it was just so unusual to hear, these kinds of characters cursing. Maybe it was done intentionally also to kind of divide the land that J.K. Rowling created and this land that Rowell created. And after the page 70, it just stopped bothering me completely. I realized that the characters are totally different. There is nothing resembling the Harry Potter stories at all. It just really shows you how much you can do with a setting and how much you can distinguish it even by keeping some elements the same. I found Simon and Baz so totally mind-blowingly cute. I was just being all for the time that I read this book, and I could really stop, and I wasn't really engrossed in it, and I liked how anti-typical it was, I suppose, because the storyline is not what you would expect from a book focusing on the chosen one, and Simon is indeed the worst chosen one of all, and I really liked the twist in the end, and I appreciated this book very much. There's no way of talking about this book without getting a bit spoilerish, so let's just get on to the next one. After Carry On, or before Carry On, it's kind of hard to remember now, I read The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, and oh my god, this book just blew me away. It blew my heart to smithereens. I cried so much, even though I went into the book expecting something very harsh. Knowing that the setting is World War II, I didn't really have any, expectation for a bright story. I knew that it was going to be a hard book to read sometimes, and I knew that I was going to have an emotional, turmoil inside of me, and indeed it happened, but this book was really good, and I couldn't really stop myself from being very attached to the characters right until the end, and the ending just blew my heart away, and I really cried and wept, and it was amazing. So I don't know what else there is to say except that it follows Liesel, who is a young girl growing up with a foster family in a small town in the middle of nowhere, pretty much in Germany. And her mother was taken away because she was a communist, and she is just experiencing a lot of grief for her separation from her mom and the death of her brother, who died on the way to the foster family. And Liesel is slowly starting to live in this family, starting to get to know everybody. She's living her life in very harsh conditions, as everyone else did, and it's focusing a lot on her perspective, on the perspective of the people around her, on the value of kindness and good intentions. And I felt that this book really connected me to the rest of the world, and I really appreciated it for what it was. In the middle of the month, I was going for something short to recover from the emotional weight that was The Book Thief, and for this I picked a short novella. It's called Montmorency by Eleanor Updale, and it's a very short novella. It's 170 pages or so. Montmorency is actually an ex-convict who has stolen some stuff and got caught, and the doctor who found him in his broken down state kind of fixed him up and kept him as his object of interest to perform wonderful operations on him to fix him up, because Montmorency suffered a big fall when he was captured as he was getting away. And so the story follows Montmorency in prison, and as he gets out, he harbors this amazing plan to live the lifestyle that he always wanted. And it's his chance to actually make a gentleman out of himself. And the fun thing that I enjoyed about this book so much is that the author actually managed to convey two different separate lifestyles in such a short amount of pages, which is very nice. I really like the witty humor in this, and I really liked some of the remarks that Montmorency makes, or some of the thoughts that he has. There are kind of two main heroes in this book. One of them is Scarper, who is his thief identity, the one who is performing all the breaks, all the thefts, and the Montmorency, who is the gentleman, and he's just trying to live it up high in the society. And I really found it cool. I found it engrossing. I know that there's a second book, but I think that this does quite well as a standalone, and I would recommend it for an easy read to get you out of the reading slump. And also it's set in Victorian London, which was super enjoyable also. So very much recommended. It will help you to get your spirits up, to laugh a bit, to be, to wonder at the nature of the human mind, and it's just a very life-affirming book. The next book that I read in pretty much record time was The Golem and the Djinni by Helene Wecker, and wow, this book was also very good. This book is a historical piece of fiction, full with magical realism. It's set in the beginning of the 20th century in New York, and it's following two separate characters, one of which is the Golem, who is a creation of a Jewish rabbi made specifically for a guy as a wife-to-be, but the guy dies on the way to New York. The Golem arrives to New York all by herself, without any previous experience, and she has to make it all on her own. The second character is the Djinni, whom I personally absolutely adore. He's fantastic. The Djinni is centuries old, and he was captured in an old flask by kind of an evil magician, you could call him that, and accidentally he got out in the midst of New York also at the same time that the Golem arrives there. So the Djinni is being let out by Arbili, who is a tinsmith. So Arbili kind of helps the Djinni out to get familiar with the surroundings. They're living in this neighborhood where all kinds of expats from the Muslim countries are living, and the Golem is living in the Jewish area of New York, and that was also really fun aspect, a historical aspect. And I also can tell you that there's going to be a second book following up the adventures of the Golem and the Djinni, and I think it's 2017 or 2018, and I'm really looking forward to reading that. So something to look forward to if you decide to pick this book up. I totally love the characters, there's lots of exploration of what it means to be human, and the values of Golem and the values of Djinni, and them clashing between each other, and I really like their friendship, their very unlikely but important friendship, and I can't wait to read more about them. Second to last book that I read in this past month is a book that I've been struggling to read for a couple of months already, and that's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And I did it! I finished it! I'm so proud of myself, really. And I read it for like a couple of months, I think, and I finally tackled it, but I watched the 90s miniseries like maybe 4 or 5 times, so I kind of knew everything that was going on, and so it was hard for me to, you know, immerse myself in it, but I did it, and when you get into it, it's really funny, and it's nice to see all the subtext and all the funny things that Elizabeth is saying, because she's really funny and witty and sassy, which is really also cool, and Mr. Darcy is like really swoon-worthy. I totally get why everybody is so obsessed with him, and it's really a classic, and I'm glad to have read it. I don't know if I'm going to be rereading it, but I'm definitely going to be rewatching the 90s miniseries again very soon. This book was published in 1813, and that's, you know, a really long time ago. And to see that they really use all kinds of words that we use nowadays, maybe in a bit of a different sense, it was also a very nice and educational read. And so, if you would like me to do a separate book talk on Pride and Prejudice, please let me know down in the comments so that I can film it, because I think there's a lot of things to discuss in there and themes that are interesting and important, and if you would like to discuss them with me, please let me know. The last book of the month that I finished basically like 30 minutes before filming this video, it was the collection of short stories called Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu. And I gotta say that this was the hardest book that I had to read probably during this year, and I have lots of emotions conflicting about it, and it's filled with short stories. Going into the book, I thought it was going to be sci-fi, which is not usually my genre, but I was willing to give it a go. But I gotta say that this book is very diverse, but at the same time the theme is very unified, it's very solid, and it's not really about science fiction. Science fiction is just a setting used for the stories. Mostly it's about the origins that Ken Liu explores, and he's exploring his origins, his Asian roots, he's exploring the Chinese history, the Japanese history, some Korean roots, and there's a lot of politics and there's a lot of exploration of what it means to be human also, but he's really driving his story very hard, and that's why it took me probably 3 or 4 months to finish this collection, although it's not really that hard to read, but he's not making it very easy for the reader, and the stories are also very emotionally hard. And it's talking about war and all kinds of things, and going into the book I had no idea that he was going to tackle all these issues. So when I first read a very harsh and cruel story, I really kind of felt broken for a while, and I couldn't really go back to it, and that says a lot, because it was very emotionally hard, and I am glad that I read them, and I would just advise you to read it if you know what you're getting into. It's going to be a lot of exploration of the past, and a lot of very stretched out philosophical thoughts that are sometimes presented in a very tough way to feel. So I'm not going to be talking about it a lot. If you had an opinion on it that differed from mine, or if you agreed with me on this, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to discuss it further. But I can talk about this book for hours, probably because it's feeling very controversial to me. So I'm going to be leaving that until further video. So, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Those were all the books that I read during the month of May. If you liked the video, please leave me a big thumbs up or a small thumbs up, doesn't matter, as long as it's not a thumbs down. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!